How many of you remember this guy?
Simon Dan, right?
You mean no Simon Dan? There's no Sai in his conversation. He just rejects the evidence and distorts it to suit his narrative. Do you know, can I just say, Ranty, before you do, Nathan and I discussed whether we should even talk about this, and we came to the conclusion that we weren't going to mention it because we didn't really want to promote him.
Hello all and welcome along. My name is Simon Dan and I'm back with more Flat Earth fun. That was our old friend Sleeping Warrior. The clip I just played was from a response to a video I made about his supposed dissection of some globe earth proof that Al K posted a couple of months ago. He wasn't happy that I'd caught him out either lying or just being plain ignorant, hence the no Simon Dan comment from him. Well, he is my subject again this week and he's been a bit silly. Let's discredit him even further. Last month he engaged in a debate with a fellow globe earth YouTuber, Conspiracy Cats. I'll put a link to his channel in the description. You definitely need to check him out, he is brilliant. In the debate, Sleeping Warrior had pre-arranged 5 talking points that they were to discuss. Now obviously Conspiracy Cats performed admirably on all points discussed, but I want to pick up the action as they begin to discuss point 5, which was this.
Space does not exist how we are told. No astronaut has ever tested a spacesuit whilst locked in a sealed vacuum chamber. Why is this evidence not there?
So this is the point we're going to look at, and Sleeping Warrior begins his argument.
Now there is a video, one video of an astronaut testing a spacesuit inside a vacuum chamber, but it was called. They pressed the panic button because the guy started to die, and they had to rush in and repressurize the container that he was in because it pulled the pressure differential pulled one of the pipes off, and basically his suit started to. Well, what his commentary afterwards said was that the spit on his tongue was beginning to boil. And literally, you watch his feet fall backwards. But the cause was that the vacuum pulled one of the pressurization pipes off that was feeding him oxygen, which was pressured because of the differential, and it burst off him and it nearly killed him.
This is true. Okay, 1966, Jim LeBlanc entered a vacuum chamber to test a moonsuit prototype. Somehow his pressurization hose became disconnected, and he was lucky enough to get out with only an earache. At this point, Sleeping Warrior then begins to unload copious amounts of word salad.
So they didn't do any more testings ever. They did not show any evidence of testings. As far as we're aware, they've not been tested at all. So the problem is, if space exists the way they tell us, and there is no evidence that spacemen in spacesuits inside a vacuum chamber have been satisfactorily tested, you have the risk of micrometeorites. You know what a micrometeorite is?
Oh yeah.
Very fast moving, but very microscopically small, basically a bullet. And there's trillions upon trillions of them floating around everywhere. They just fly. That's space, right? Little tiny micrometeorites.
Yeah.
An astronaut is incredibly at risk of a micrometeorite collision with his suit that's going to basically, if it doesn't pass straight through the suit and him in it, it'll pass through the suit and scar the suit and create a puncture. But if it did that, then he's in immediate danger, very quickly danger. And any normal risk assessment will tell you that what's the risk? Micrometeorites. I mean, there are other risks, but this is just one example. But micrometeorites are the risk. What action can be taken to protect yourself against a projectile that's travelling at thousands of miles an hour, that's infinitely small, that will rupture your suit, and probably you if you get in between it and that. And you can't. There's nothing you can do about it because you can't predict when they're going to come unless you're carrying around in a massive load of steel. You're not going to be able to guard against it.
If you want to be technical, a micrometeorite would have already passed through Earth's atmosphere. I assume we're considering micrometeoroids. If you'd actually done some digging on this, you'd have found that astronaut suits are protected for this outcome to a point where NASA would not use them if the chance of penetration was higher than 6%. That means 94% of impacts do not go straight through the suit.
But even if we accept the micrometeorites point, the differential itself why has no spaceman ever been shown inside a vacuum chamber in a vacuum that we can prove is a vacuum, not just by a needle but by putting water in there or whatever, prove that it is genuine vacuum? And there are flat earthers, Mark Sargent, who has volunteered that if there is a space astronaut that is prepared to get inside a proper NASA astronaut suit, then get inside a vacuum chamber, turn the pressure off so that it makes the vacuum, and then get him out of it and he survives, he will then validate that as true. And so far, we haven't been able to do it.
Yes, we have. Okay, we've got the Johnson Space Center vacuum chamber that has tested the suits they plan to use in the Orion spacecraft. This was done in March 2017. Here is a photo of them during the test. Oh, but you need to see water boiling, you say, otherwise you don't believe it. Well, what if I say that this has been done so regularly and is so relatively safe enough that they put a TV personality in one of them 8 years ago? The Grand Tour presenter James May went into a vacuum chamber for his BBC show. It clearly shows water boiling in the chamber with him. I can't show a clip due to copyright issues, but I'll post a link to the video in the description. Watch this now if you can, and then come back.
But fundamentally, we are challenging science to see whether or not this is capable of replication.
Which it is, as I've just explained.
Now, there are vacuum chambers all around the world, and we have a guy who claims to be the son of an astronaut. His name is M. Scott Veitch, and I'm sure he could pull some strings because his dad was a real-life astronaut. Daddy lied to him.
More word salad.
Or why has no spaceman ever been inside a vacuum chamber, inside a spacesuit, to prove that a spacesuit even does what they say it does, regardless of the micrometeorites claim? That is really big evidence that the credibility of space does need to have, and we're right to be beating the drum about it.
You mean like the evidence I just supplied?
These guys have not got the evidence to show that spaceman can exist in a spacesuit inside a vacuum chamber, which is what they tell the space is, and that evidence is really big, and it's missing.
It's really not. You can find it in like 2 minutes.
Why is that evidence missing, and why are we even having the conversation? It should be cats sat on the mat stuff. It should be that's what happens inside a spacesuit, inside a chamber, and they can exist for whatever. And that's not even considering the risk of micrometeorites. So the question is, why does that evidence not exist? And if it does exist, why are we not seeing it when we're all screaming for it? Because we want to see a man in existence inside a spacesuit, inside a vacuum, and then see what happens.
Got a timeline between us and this. Oh, there he goes.
Word salad only gets you so far, buddy. Sooner or later you're going to end up looking silly, like today. It gets worse though. After some exchanges with conspiracy cats, he continues with more baffling points.
For space to exist, the gas pressure, by definition of a gas pressure, it still does require the walls of the container. So yeah, we can create a vacuum, man-made. We can create a vacuum, but how do you have a vacuum in space, what they call space, without any walls for it to exist? It requires them walls for it to be a vacuum.
Oh dear, the word salad is becoming very wilted very quickly. The vacuum of space needs walls to contain it. What? Yes, we need walls to contain a vacuum here on Earth because we have an atmosphere, and any hole in the container would mean the higher air pressure of the atmosphere outside the vacuum would rush inside said container. A vacuum is just empty space. You don't need walls to contain an empty space.
So it's like having like a tyre.
You just need to look at the expression on Conspiracy Cat's face here to see the absurdity of the statement.
With no tyre. It's like having the air inside the tyre at 30 psi, but with no tyre. And the idea that sounds to me preposterous. But ultimately, there is no evidence of any spaceman in a spacesuit inside a vacuum chamber to prove that they can actually do it.
Apart from the evidence I've just given you.
Why is it not there?
Well, what you said about the 70,000, just slightly going off topic for a second, I think there's people out there outside of flat Earth or whatever. I don't think the Earth's flat. I would love to see the original video footage from the moon landing. I think it'd be great, and that when you get that back, that should either answer a lot of your questions or it will raise a lot more questions and a lot more suspicion, won't it? It'll do one of the two.
Have you not realised that I know this wasn't one of the questions, but the Challenger disaster, the biggest NASA disaster that they've had? Are you aware that of all the, I think it was 9 astronauts that died, 8 of them are still alive?
I've heard that. I've said to you before, I love watching conspiracy documentaries and things like that. That's on my list to get through. I don't believe that.
And you are right not to. This gives us a great insight into how Sleeping Warrior gets his information and the fact checking that he does. What he's probably seen is a picture like this, or a slightly different variation of it, or a YouTube video or something. Now if Mr. Warrior had actually looked into it and done some research, not flat earth research but proper research, he would have found out that this is all a hoax. The man on the left of this picture is the commander of Challenger, Francis Scobie. The man on the right is also Francis Scobie, who during the time of the launch was CEO and president of the Marketing Edge Inc. out of Chicago. Clearly not the same guy. I mean, they've got completely different shaped chins. What about this one? The man on the left of this picture is Challenger mission specialist Ellison Onizaka. The man on the right is his brother Claude. And this one. The lady on the left of this picture is Sharon McAuliffe, a teacher who was selected out of 11,000 applicants to be the first civilian in space. The lady on the right doesn't even look like her, and we're supposed to believe that they're the same person, despite the fact that at the time of the launch, Sharon McAuliffe on the right was working for a law firm in New York. That's just 3 examples, and it's the same for all the others. A horrible hoax that is a disgrace to the memory of the astronauts that lost their lives that day. It's likely that some of them didn't actually die as a result of the explosion, and that they fell to their deaths with the knowledge they probably wouldn't survive. Sleeping Warrior, I want you to really think about that. Imagine what it must have been like. Think about their families and what they've been through. Then tell me you're okay with carelessly spreading this sort of garbage around like it's a known fact. Sorry, but that conspiracy is one that really annoys me. It's not like the shape of the Earth, because the Earth doesn't care what you think. This one involves real people, courageous people that dared to dream of more. You don't get to shit all over that because you believe any old claptrap that you see on the internet. Bloody hell, I got angry twice in 2 weeks. Well, I think that's it for me. Just about done for today. Thank you all very much for watching. Big shout out to Conspiracy Cats. I mean it about checking out his channel. Please do that, he is excellent. If you enjoyed it, then please allow yourself to like and subscribe. Remember, there's a Facebook page as well. Just search for Simon Dan. I shall see you all next week. Thank you and bye.